What did you do when you woke up this morning? Shake off the Ambien with a cup of coffee? Maybe you had a blueberry muffin coated with those delicious, crispy sugar lumps? Will you have a glass of wine tonight with dinner? Maybe take an Advil for your shoulder pain? Jesus Louises, don't look now. But you're on drugs. As film lovers mourn the death of the endlessly talented Philip Seymour Hoffman, and baseball fans actively revile Alex Rodriguez, has it ever occurred to you that caffeine and sugar are your drugs of choice, your personal performance enhancers, without which you couldn't stomach another day at the office? Well, you're no different from them. You're human, and you're on drugs. This is The Independence. Hi there, I'm Kennedy, and joined by Reason Magazine editor-in-chief, Matt Welch. Indeed. It's like a cup of grape juice.
Never heard that one before.
We strive for originality and freedom. We're also joined by Kmele Foster from Free Think Media. Dapper, dashing, we are The Independents. And we've been conditioned for years that drugs are bad, destructive, and using them makes you evil. So many PSAs, so much guilt. Did you scramble your brain when you were young?
This is your brain. This is drugs. This is your brain on drugs. Any questions?
Yeah, can I have toast with that? But I'm kind of confused because holy mixed messages. They're also telling us this.
The best part of waking up is Folgers in your cup.
Take 1 5-hour energy, then see what the rest of your day feels like. Sure won't feel like 2:30 anymore.
You've reached the age where giving up isn't who you are. This is the age of knowing how to make things happen. So why let erectile dysfunction get in your way?
Tylenol PM rapid-release gels are different. They don't just quiet the pain. They help you fall asleep in a non-habit-forming way. Because the less you worry, the better you sleep.
But I'm so worried about the egg. Well, I had no choice but to tell a few innocent bystanders that they weren't mainlining Ace of Spades, but between the coffee and the cigarettes, they're on drugs. You're on drugs.
Good job. What?
You're on drugs.
Okay, sure.
Are you on drugs?
No.
Like coffee? Do you drink coffee?
Sure.
That's a drug, right? You know you're on drugs.
No.
Yes,
no.
cigarettes, it's a drug.
No.
It's a drug! Now you've done it! Do you know that cigarettes are drugs? You're on drugs.
Yes.
Do you drink coffee?
Yeah, yes, I do.
You're on drugs. Is that coffee?
Yes.
You're on drugs. Yeah, you're on drugs. Caffeine is a drug.
I don't drink that much.
No, just a little bit, just enough to get you by?
Yeah.
That's how it starts. What's your drug of choice? You gotta be on something.
Green tea.
I love green tea. You know why? EGCG.
Yes.
Do you know green tea fights like 10 kinds of cancer?
That's why I take it.
Is that coffee?
Yes.
Do you need it?
Yes.
You're on drugs.
Only this kind.
Well, that's enough, right?
Yes, that is.
Start to the coffee, and then right to meth. You don't do any other drugs? Do you smoke? Smoke weed, little puff pass with your friends?
No, just make love.
Oh. So intercourse is your drug of choice?
Just romance.
Sexy. So why are we so driven to put things in our bodies that change the way we think, feel, and act? And why do we vilify some drugs while accepting and promoting others? With us is Hart. He's a neuroscientist and professor of psychiatry at Columbia University. He's also the author of High Price, a Neuroscientist's Journey of Self-Discovery that challenges everything you know about drugs and society. Welcome, Carl.
Thank you for having me.
So, Carl, so many drugs, so many choices, but so much hypocrisy. Why?
Why is there so much hypocrisy? That's a great question. I mean, it all depends on what drug you're talking about. So drugs, they serve as great scapegoats in order to not deal with some of the problems that society might face. So when we think about all the drugs that have been most vilified in our society, they've been vilified, not as you all nicely point out, not because of the pharmacology, because as you stated, caffeine, nicotine, all of those things are drugs, and they have similar effects on the brain and so forth. But something like heroin, methamphetamine, cocaine, those drugs have been vilified in part because of the people who are considered to be the users, people who the society don't necessarily like. This goes back to the early 1900s, and it continues today.
No, it really does. And they had a ranking graph of the most dangerous drugs, the most dangerous being alcohol, heroin, crack, and meth for the top four. The bottom four, ecstasy, LSD, and then some other opiate I couldn't pronounce.
Yeah, so you have to be careful when people make these rankings. So alcohol is at the top primarily because alcohol is the only one of those drugs that people can die from alcohol withdrawal. I mean, but beyond that, alcohol can be used relatively safely. I mean, when you think about moderate alcohol use, like most people who use alcohol, there are beneficial effects associated with that. Decreased heart disease, decreased strokes, all these sorts of things. And then when you think about these other drugs, heroin, methamphetamine, particularly when we think about Adderall, there are a number of people who are benefiting from Adderall, the attention deficit disorder drug. And so it all depends on how and when and why the drug is being used before we can determine whether or not it's harmful or not.
I've seen you talk about how meth and Adderall are basically indistinguishable. What is indistinguishable from methamphetamine, which everyone knows is a terrible drug? It rots your face off.
Yeah, the only difference is that when you look at the basic amphetamine structure, there's a methyl group added from methamphetamine. And that methyl group, it has been said to cause the drug to be more potent, more lipid soluble, crosses the blood-brain barrier more rapidly. And then there were these incredible things said about what that means for human behavior. But when we've done the study and other people have done the studies, they are the same drug. They are essentially the same drug. The effects produced by these drugs are indistinguishable when you look at human behavior.
But you'd never see a mom go into a doctor's office and say, "Can you please put my son on meth?
Yeah.
He can't concentrate in class."
Yes, but actually that's what moms are saying when they're saying that they want their kid on Adderall. They are in effect saying that put my kid on meth. By the way, methamphetamine is FDA approved in this country for attention deficit disorder in the pill form. It's the same drug. It's just that the meth that we see on some of these commercials, these public service announcements, they are, you're looking at illicit methamphetamine use made in these clandestine sort of places and taken by people we don't like. So that's the major problem.
Is there any way to compare and contrast these various drug categories? I mean, obviously, I don't think you're suggesting that cocaine, methamphetamine, and Tylenol are all the same, and that we should all feel free to use them at our convenience when we're feeling down.
No, that's a great point. So when we think about acetaminophen and we think about cocaine, what's the difference? It's like acetaminophen, of course, it's not the same as cocaine. Acetaminophen, if you have a headache or something, it would be a lot better for you to take that than cocaine. However, if you have dental pain and you're worried about having dental surgery or something like that, then you want cocaine. You want to put cocaine there because cocaine is a local anesthetic. Novocaine is just a modification of the cocaine structure.
Is that true? I mean, of course, they sound very similar. They have the same ending. But
so cocaine was the first local anesthetic that we discovered, and we modified the structure to make Novocaine so it doesn't cross the blood-brain barrier. But they're the same drug. So it all depends what you're using these drugs for and how you use it. That's the most important thing. It's just that most people who engage in drug use and the public at large, they're just ignorant about the effects of drugs. But all of these things can be used safely, and they can all be used to enhance human potential.
Okay, so we have hysteria and misinformation. Yes or no question, should all drugs be legal?
No, not currently, because as I just stated, the population is too ignorant. If we increase, like you showed, it was like my classroom, those clips that you showed this is your brain on drugs and so forth. When you have that kind of ignorance in a society about drugs, the society is not ready to use the drugs safely. Now, that's not to say that most people will go and get in trouble with it. I'm more worried about the hysteria that the comments that will be attributed to drugs or the effects that will be attributed to drugs that are not real. So before legalizing, I argue that we need to increase good, realistic, sound education around drugs. In the meantime, I have argued for decriminalizing all drugs.
Interesting.
That is, treat drugs just like we treat traffic violations.
Carl Hart, thank you very much. We're going to see you later in the show, and we're certainly going to talk about drug hysteria. Baseball players aren't the only ones who use PEDs. Just wait till you hear the lengths some professionals go to stay at the top of their game. But here's a hint. They're not athletes. Stay with us.
for every performance, there's a way to enhance it. So you take beta blockers to calm you down?
It actually doesn't calm me down. It prevents me from getting nervous. Here we go.
But I was in college and I was having really, really bad problems with performance anxiety, and it was actually making me question what I was doing in the first place. A friend gave me beta blockers, and I just couldn't believe it. I felt like I could get up there and do exactly what I wanted to do, and I wasn't hindered by what my body was reacting to.
Blocking that adrenaline goes a long way towards enhancing performance.
My God, there is nothing sexier than a beta-blocked bassoonist. Welcome back to The Independents. We've been doing a little research on you when we found out you're on drugs. That was a clip from the documentary Bigger, Stronger, Faster. Performance enhancement is hardly the sole domain of baseball players and weightlifters. Where there's a quest for greatness, there's a PED at the ready. Chris Bell is a filmmaker who has documented the quest for greatness through drugs, starting with his own family. His first film was Bigger, Stronger, Faster. Welcome, Chris Bell.
How you doing?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing awesome.
So tell me about the relationship in this country between performing at your best and putting things in your body to get there.
Well, I think we're a country that just praises greatness. We praise, exceptionalism. We praise people for doing things that, we can't do. And a lot of times to be able to do those things, we need to be on drugs, like you're saying. I thought it was ridiculous, actually, when I got a phone call from a power lifter, my friend Jesse Burdick. He deadlifts like 800 pounds, and he's like a big power lifter guy. And he said, hey, I trained this guy who's a musician, and he takes drugs to perform. And I'd never heard anything like it. So when I was making the film, it was just sort of a no-brainer to sort of research the other areas of life where, people take drugs. And like one of them was, in the porn industry, they take Viagra to perform. In, music, they take beta blockers. In the United States Air Force, they're required to carry amphetamines in their airplane. They're required. We're the only country in the world that does that.
So are people more opposed to PEDs or losing?
I think people are more opposed to losing and more opposed to, not living up to their potential and not living up to being great or, exceeding limits that were, were set, a long time ago by mere mortals. And now with the drugs and with the enhancements, and also you got to remember, like just the advances in nutrition and training, and this goes through everything. It's not just weightlifting or bodybuilding. It's any sport, but also any business too. Like everything, technology has advanced so far, that like everybody's ADD because we're too busy charging our iPad or iPhone or, you got a million different devices, a million things to look at, a million things like being shoved out, in your face and down your throat every day. It's like you sort of need drugs to get by nowadays, it seems like.
Chris, there's always been a lot of hysteria around steroid use, in particular in the weightlifting culture, in wrestling and football. What are some common misconceptions about what steroids do, whether it's making your testicles the size of marbles or turning you into a rageaholic?
Well, definitely, it will definitely shrink your testicles, but that will come right back right when you go off the drugs. I actually say in the movie to my brother, well, who needs them anyway? We talk about...
someone who wants babies.
It won't... Well, the thing is, it won't shrink your penis. It'll shrink your testicles, maybe, but not your penis, right? So when you're talking about these like side effects, most of them are actually just myths. They're like things that people made up. You're going to go into a roid rage. Well, roid rage wasn't made up by the medical community. Roid rage was made up by the media. It's a media frenzy. It's a media storm. It's like when Chris Benoit killed his family and they blamed it on steroids, but there was 9 other prescription drugs in his body and alcohol, and he was crazy, and he had 16 concussions. I mean, the media is so irresponsible when they report on performance-enhancing drugs. You guys are one of the only people that have called me after 5 years of this movie being on the air. I've done a couple shows here and there, but I mean, literally, like every time they get on, they blast steroids and they blast everything without any facts. And that's a big misconception, is like nobody's dying from steroids, but people are dying from a lot of these prescription drugs.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Now, Chris, there is the capacity for abuse, and you can actually injure yourself taking steroids. Is that a consequence of the fact that it is prohibited and people just don't know how to properly take steroids, or what is the issue here?
You got to say that also, like, you can injure yourself, or you can overdose or overdo almost anything. But I have to say that, like, actually overdosing on steroids is basically impossible. I mean, you can inject an entire bottle of testosterone into your body and you won't die. Try doing that with a bottle of aspirin, or even a dietary supplement like potassium, and you will drop dead for sure. So while you can't overdose on them like acutely, over time, what happens is you build up to being like, if you're supposed to weigh 200 pounds and you walk around at 300 pounds, you're going to have a heart attack, or you're going to have a heart problem, or you're going to have some sort of problem due to being overweight and maybe having high blood pressure and other things like that. But actually, like, the steroid actually, being responsible for an acute, symptom or something like that is it's just sort of like more of a myth than it is, a fact.
Thank you so much for taking the time.
Great. Thank you for having me.
Sweet, bigger, stronger, faster. Check it out. It's really good. You can watch it online. And in just a bit, we'll talk to a psychiatrist who says too many kids are legally prescribed drugs. But next, from Molly to Smarties, what are those damn kids putting into their bodies now? Drug crazes? It's just crazy enough to be total BS. Stay with us. Why don't you just get me a Pepsi? Welcome back to The Independence. We haven't looked between your toes for track marks, but based on your love of Starbucks and Dunkin' Donuts, we think you're on drugs. Without fail, every year, parents are scared silly about what their kids might be putting in their bodies as law enforcement and journalists work together to foster hysteria. From Molly to meth to bath salts, the next big thing always sounds much worse than what's really going into the system.
The horrific flesh-eating drug Krokodil is made of codeine tablets mixed with chemicals like gasoline and paint thinner. It can cause limbs to fall off and skin to turn a scaly green.
A growing and dangerous trend in Connecticut.
A substance labeled as bath salts and sold over the counter in shops across the state can produce a high similar to cocaine.
Two drugs being made were a synthetic marijuana called spice and a synthetic cocaine known as bath salt or kryptonite.
All ended up sick after smoking the marijuana substitute, which not only looks like the real deal, but also has the same effects.
The candy is now being used for fake smoking, and it's gaining popularity among tweens who demonstrate it on YouTube.
I like the sassy sours, or you can bang them on something hard. We're gonna smoke Smarties.
Those crafty little bastards. Smarties, yes. If you inhale them, you'll get nasal maggots. Matt, what's your favorite drug craze?
It's the current one, because there's always a current one, the Krokodil or Krokodil, whatever it's called.
No one really knows how to say it because it's spelled with two Ks.
That's because it comes from Russia, right? And so it's a result in Russia because you can't get smack, and everybody wants smack, and not everybody, but a small percentage of people in every country want to have heroin. So you can't get that anywhere, but you can get codeine over the counter, which is really great.
As you can in most countries.
Yeah, most countries, not this one. And so they mix codeine with a bunch of just horrifyingly bad stuff, and a small number of people have bad things happen to them. So they've heard about that in America, that it's happening in Russia, and so they say that it might happen here. You get the local news story with a cop saying it's going to come to Utah any minute now, and this case over here, it might be a case of
A girl
Krokodil.
in Houston said she might have gotten Krokodil, although she doesn't really know that, and she didn't test positive for what might be in there.
And, I mean, the stuff that's in Krokodil is a known chemical compound. So all you need is someone to show up with their face half eaten off, you test their blood, and it's going to be Krokodil. It hasn't happened yet, even once in this country. And we've seen it with bath salts and the flesh-eating zombies and all
Bath salts turn
that.
you into a cannibal.
Yeah, that's what we've heard.
Except for the part where he hadn't taken bath salts. He was high on the weed.
Well, this is the unfortunate intersection of like ignorance and paranoia and fear-mongering and the pervasive fear-mongering.
Lousy journalism.
Absolutely lousy journalism. I mean, there is not actually a rational explanation for why people would actually want to use Krokodil here, considering we do not have the same sort of shortages that they do overseas. But it stands to reason that things like the Y2K scare, bird flu, all of these other things actually benefit from precisely the same thing that these sorts of freakouts do, which is if people are ignorant, the story gets out there, it is pervasively spread by the media, and the retraction is never ever issued.
But law enforcement
no one talks about
is
it.
right there providing the false statistics and the unconfirmed reports that journalists just glom onto.
Well, they're subject to the same biases.
Yeah, I mean, it's also the new and the sexy. So as Chris Bell was mentioning in the previous segment, the history of these kind of scares, including for absinthe, which was illegal for a century, right? It was illegal because some guy in Switzerland hacked his wife and kids to death. It was a horrific crime, awful, right? And he had some absinthe that day. He had also had like 2 bottles of wine, bunch of beer. He was messed up in the head. He'd been ingesting all kinds of substances and had a little bit of absinthe. This was known as the absinthe murderers. And then it was banned country after country after country because it was a new weird thing that strange people did. Yeah. All you need is an exotic sounding substance and a single crime, and they'll plug everything
the
into
scary narrative sticks. The other ones go away, and no one ever comes back to give you the other side of the story.
No,
we see that all the time.
Yeah, it's really like Molly, which is, you know, the molecular form of MDMA, which is ecstasy, and, you know, different rappers and Miley Cyrus sing and rap about it. And, you know, people were terrified of that. And even Madonna got on stage at a festival and said, "Who's been dancing with Molly?" And someone confronted her. She was like, "I meant a lady named Molly." She's like, "No, you didn't, you big liar."
I remember in the late 80s when I was in college, there was an ice epidemic. And I kept thinking, what the hell is ice?
Yeah.
They didn't even know.
Is it Zima?
I went back to look today to see an ice headline, and this was a direct headline newspaper. The ice danger is coming, but when it'll arrive isn't crystal clear. That's perfect. That's exactly what happens with every drug scare.
It's like the polar vortex of drugs. Sweaty palms, priapism, palpitations. We're going to play Name That Drug. But first, what is your favorite drug?
What do you think the most popular drug in America is? Coffee and cigarettes. And methamphetamine. Yes. I don't know if that's true, but it sounds good, right? Yes.
Let's see if these guys can keep track of which drugs do what to your body. It's time to play Name That Drug. With a man who can spot any side effect from 1,000 yards away, it's stand-up comedian Dave Hill. He joins Matt and Camille. Hi, Dave.
Hello.
Let's play Name That Drug. Question number 1, here are the side effects. Stroke, ectopic pregnancy, orofacial clefts. Is it A, ketamine, B, tobacco, or C, marijuana? The correct answer is B, it's tobacco. Dave Hill, you got the first one right. Well done.
Thank you.
Sorry, guys, catch up.
Nailed it.
Totally nailed it. Like Carrie Strug. Question number 2, name that drug. Side effects include chills, dilated pupils, and panic attacks. Is it A, LSD, B, anabolic steroids, or C, Prozac? Name that drug. Let's see, 2 of you said C. Matt, you said A. You are correct, Matt, and tied with Dave. Sorry, it is not Prozac. It is LSD. Steve Jobs considered LSD one of the 3 most important experiences of his life, after Boys State and camping.
If by most important he means worst, I totally agree with him.
Yes, that was awful. All right, side effects for question number 3. Constipation, hallucinations, and irregular heartbeat. Is it A, Athelas, B, mushrooms, or C, Tylenol PM?
Got this one.
Camille, that is not correct. You can only choose one letter. All right, Matt and Dave, you are correct. It is Tylenol PM. Athelas is actually a medicinal weed used by hobbits in Lord of the Rings.
I didn't know what that was.
I think you mispronounced it. I thought it was Athelas.
Oh, whatever.
Yeah.
Question number 4.
Still get you high.
Athelas, bueno. Question number 4. The side effects are stroke and heart attack, paranoia, and excitement. Is it A, Viagra, B, crack cocaine, or C, ecstasy?
Oh, are you sure I can't choose all 3?
You all said A. You're all wrong.
I know.
The proper response is B, crack cocaine. Question number 5.
Too hard on crack.
Don't go so hard on the crack. The side effects for question number 5, brain and liver damage, decreased cognitive function. Is it A, alcohol, B, Bacta, or C, 7 ounces of pure uncut black tar Mexican heroin?
Oh, yes.
Sorry.
You are all correct. Yes, it is in fact alcohol. Alcohol
What kind of handwriting?
causes brain and liver damage.
The A is the
Decreased
star.
cognitive function.
Doing a good
And
job.
poor intercourse choices. All right, question number 6. The side effects include constipation, drowsiness, blurred vision. Is it A, colloidal silver, B, diazepam, or C, Benadryl? The correct answer is C. Dave, you move into the lead. If you overdose on colloidal silver, your skin turns blue permanently.
Oh, right.
And it happened to a Montana librarian, and I'm not reading the rest of that because that's quite rude. Okay. Question number 7. And Matt, you have a chance to tie Dave here on the final question, and you two would share victory.
Can I have a daily double or something so I have a chance?
Side effects, if you get this extra right, Camille, you will also be tied for the lead.
All right.
Side effects include convulsion, hives, and tarry stool. Is it A, Prozac, B, methadone, or C, Adderall? And you are our winner, Dave Hill.
Yes.
Congratulations. The answer is methadone, convulsions, hives, and tarry stool.
I'm a ringer with this stuff.
Go see your pharmacist if you want to party with those side effects. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Well done. And Camille, I'm sorry, you're not good at the games right now.
No.
Okay,
No.
but
Did he get anything right?
You know what, Matt?
I
yeah,
did
he did.
get
He got one question right.
Right. Now, I don't use drugs. I'm not like you people abusing drugs.
What do you mean, you
legal or
people,
illegal?
Camille?
Exactly.
Oh, we are quick to condemn bath salts and ecstasy, but some people have no problem putting their kids on Adderall or Paxil. Is it too much for budding brains? One psychiatrist thinks that we're taking too many drugs. That's next.
My antidepressant worked hard to help with my depression, but sometimes I still struggled. Since adding Abilify, I feel better. Abilify and my antidepressant make a pretty good team.
This is The Independence, where we're separating myth from fallacy and hypocrisy from necessity. How do you know when to condemn your children for smoking marijuana or march them into the doctor's office for a refill on his ADD medication? Here with us is Dr. Peter Breggin. He's the author of Medication Madness. Welcome, Dr. Breggin.
Hi.
All right, have we gone mad over prescribing ourselves with all sorts of antidepressant medication?
Well, antidepressants and stimulants, they're very different drugs. Yeah, I think the drugs are far more dangerous than, in fact, many so-called gurus on the subject are realizing. Let's just start with the drugs we give, the stimulants for kids. Not only are the amphetamines that we give them, like Adderall and Dexedrine, very similar to methamphetamine and very similar to cocaine, but so is methylphenidate, which is Ritalin. So the basic drugs we give our kids are all in that stimulant category. They all predispose to later drug abuse because they change the brain. They all cause permanent harm to the brain. We can study that in rats. We're seeing more and more MRIs showing brain shrinkage from exposure to these drugs. They cause an inhibition of growth, including height. And they cause in some kids psychosis, in some kids cardiac problems. And long term, the studies are now coming in. If you as a child 30 years ago were diagnosed with ADHD and put on the most supposedly mild of the drugs, Ritalin, you now have much higher rates of incarceration, much higher rates of psychiatric hospitalization, much higher rates of drug abuse, you're economically in a lower status, and your educational achievements are lower. You actually develop a career as a result of the diagnosis and the drug, of taking drugs and getting more and more diagnoses. We're really looking at a catastrophe for our children.
Is there no legitimate use for any of these categories of drugs for any person, whether they be a child or someone who is struggling with depression who is an adult?
Well, let's look at children. I think we should protect children from psychoactive substances. Their brains are growing. You introduce a drug like Ritalin that throws at least 3 neurotransmitters out of whack and then want the child's brain to grow amid that toxic environment. I think we should protect children against psychoactive substances, just like we try to protect them against alcohol, cigarettes, and marijuana. Their brains can't handle it, and you're changing their brains forever. You never even know what they're ordinary natural potential would have been. With adults, I think it's a matter of choice. I think adults need to know that the science about these drugs show that long-term, the antidepressants, switching now to another category, that the antidepressants are producing apathy, indifference, loss of quality of life.
But aren't those the things you'd expect with someone who's depressed? Apathy, indifference?
This is whether they get over the depression or not. This is so clear, it's even described as a syndrome now in modern textbooks, the apathy syndrome from antidepressants. The main difference here is I'm just a psychiatrist who's willing to actually speak truth to my own profession and to the public. Nothing I'm saying isn't in the scientific literature.
All right, Dr. Breggin, thank you very much. And we'll see if pediatricians and, psychiatrists follow suit, pay attention to the data, and stop over-prescribing children. Thank you. All right, coming up next, a familiar face who says we're crazy for all of our loose drug talk. And Carl Hart returns to join the discussion on what should be legal and what you should get locked up for. But first, what's your favorite drug?
What's your favorite drug?
The theater.
That's wonderful.
That's my favorite drug.
They're going to outlaw it soon.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Welcome back to The Independent. You don't have to always agree to come to solid conclusions about the choices you make, and it seems every day people choose to ingest something to make them feel or perform better. We have a weird way of classifying drug use, but are we completely off base? We hit the streets and asked, what's your favorite drug, baby?
What's your favorite drug?
I don't take.
You don't smoke?
Nothing. No coffee. I'm a nurse. No medication.
No medication? No Nurse Jackie for you.
No.
What's your favorite drug?
The theater.
That's wonderful.
That's my favorite drug.
They're going to outlaw it soon.
Oh, no.
Yes.
Hello, my baby. Hello, my honey.
Hello, my ragtime gal. Send me a kiss by wire. Baby, my heart's on fire. What's your favorite drug?
My favorite drug? I don't use drugs.
Coffee, sugar, chocolate.
I would say chocolate.
Yeah, me too. Man, if chocolate were illegal, I'd be in prison, you know what I'm saying? You like coffee? Woo!
A little bit coffee. And, weed sometimes.
Sure, man.
Yeah.
Back hurts maybe a little bit. Tired.
Cigarettes.
That's all, baby. That's all you do? When you want to party, you just whip out one of the Marlboro Lights?
I'd like coffee, too.
Some of those little red pills, Sudafed, you know what I'm saying, huh?
Sure.
Over the counter?
Yeah.
Woo! Take 6 of those.
Cheap and easy, why not?
Uppers, downers, peyote buttons, Molly, Sheila.
Uppers.
What do you think the most popular drug in America is?
Coffee and cigarettes.
And methamphetamine.
Yes.
I don't know if that's true, but it sounds good, right?
Yes.
I would actually say alcohol.
Yeah, I think so too.
That would be the #1 choice.
Yeah.
Followed by marijuana.
Yeah, well, if it's a good night,
or
huh?
maybe hand in hand.
Hi, good to see you. We are joined by Fox Senior Legal Analyst Lis Wiehl, and Carl Hart rejoins us. Now, Lis, libertarians are known for their loosey-goosey view of legalizing drugs, and
You said it, I didn't.
A lot of people think that we're probably too permissive in, being so allowing of so many things being legalized. Do you think that we're off base, and is this dangerous?
Yes, I do. I mean, I prosecuted cases as a federal prosecutor, and people say, oh, marijuana isn't a gateway drug. I know that it is. I mean, I prosecuted cases where that's what, they started with marijuana, and that high wasn't enough. They went into coke and all this other stuff. And what did they do then when they need a fix? Well, they go rob banks, or they get involved in, now, not everybody. I could see my learned colleague here's rolling his eyes already. But, there's really no public policy that says it's a good thing to legalize drugs.
Except for the costs of prohibition, which make these things so expensive that you engage in a dangerous activity to try to afford
look how prohibition worked out so well.
Well, that's it. I mean, prohibition.
Well, we have prohibition for drugs, so I think that's the point. Is it's not working. And
but it is. It is to a certain extent, in the sense that the war on drugs has been going on for many, many years. We haven't won the war on drugs, but we have put people away that are involved in drugs. See, I looked at the drugs as not the recreational stuff, but to put people away in prison who are going out and committing crimes because of the drugs, that happens a lot.
There's a big difference between committing crimes and hurting people and stealing things and being on drugs or using drugs.
If you're just sitting in your home, right down in your basement, and you're having the marijuana and stuff, and you're not hurting anybody, you're not getting in the car afterwards, you're not going to hurt anybody, well then, you know, I have a lot, I'd be more loosey-goosey about something like that. But that doesn't technically very often happen. People get high, they get in the car, they hurt people. I mean, it happens.
Let's go to the doctor here for the gateway drug.
Is marijuana, that's the question, is marijuana a gateway drug?
Well, so it all depends on what you mean when you say a gateway drug. Typically, what we think we mean is that you use marijuana, then you are inevitably going to use heroin or something like that. The vast majority of people who smoke marijuana don't go on to use cocaine, don't go on to use heroin. The vast majority of people who use heroin and cocaine have used milk before, but nobody says that milk is a sort of gateway substance. And so when we think about the gateway thing, it's a bad analogy, because most of the people who use marijuana don't go on to use heroin and cocaine. When you think about the last 3 occupants of the White House, Barack Obama, George Bush, Bill Clinton, all of those guys used marijuana. So we can say that marijuana is a gateway drug to the White House, and then people would say, "That's come on, that's." But that's about
but
what it means.
What about getting high and getting in the car? I mean, what about, you know, because we think about DUIs as, you know, driving while you're impaired, as alcohol.
That's a fair argument, but we do not make alcohol illegal in order to prevent people from doing that.
Right.
We are doing that with drugs, and there are a number of spillover effects. And when you look at a place like Chicago, for example, which is being devastated now as a result of the drug war, there's a serious question to be asked.
Well,
is it worth it?
Justify bad behavior with other bad behavior?
When you look at the United States, let's just be honest here. When we think about the drug war, right now, largely because of the drug war, 1 in 3 black boys born today will spend time in prison. I have 3 sons. One of them will spend time in prison as a result of what's going on. Black men make up 6% of the general population, 35% of the prison population, in large part because of how we are fighting our drug war. Now, when we think about things that are dangerous in a society, if we're worried about people getting in trouble, driving an automobile in general can be dangerous, but we don't say let's ban automobiles. What we say,
no, but you say
hold on.
Okay.
What we say is, how about we make them more safer? We add airbags, we change speed limits, we make sure people wear seatbelts. All of these kind of things will keep people safe. Drugs are not going anywhere.
Not if you're high when you're even.
Lise, let me ask you one question, and I just want a quick answer. What would it take for you to reform your view on drug policy and drug legalization?
I don't think I can. I mean, I've been a prosecutor too long. I saw too many bad cases. I mean, I think your arguments are good and solid, but I've just seen the ramifications, so you're not going to change my view on it.
All right, that's why we had you here. We want to hear what you have to say. You have an interesting, rich background.
But I want to say something before we end. One of the things that as critical thinkers, people who are thinking in our society, if we have our behavior solely be controlled by our sort of simple anecdotal information, our anecdotal experience, we're in trouble as a society, because our view may not be reflective of what the broader data and the information says. So that's why we send our kids to school, to college, to universities, so they can learn what the actual facts are.
Right.
All right.
And
well,
not to take drugs.
Lise, Carl, thank you very much.
Got it.
Thank you.
All right, that means no caffeine, no sugar, none of it. Well, next, you can't have a discussion about drugs in society without getting Kmele all fired up, taking it to the next level. Some government agencies got to go, at least if we're keeping it Kmele, which we are. Next.
Dancing women throwing plates, decapitating their laughing gates, swirling chickens caught me.
This is The Independent. You're on drugs. I hope you're proud of yourself. The FDA is there to protect us, to keep drugs wholesome, and to make sure what crosses the threshold of our pristine vessels is safe and methodically vetted. Not so much, says Kmele Foster. And since we're keeping it Kmele, we got to know what has you rattled today about the FDA.
Well, I mean, the FDA is a predictably bureaucratic and bloated organization. They have their standard inefficiencies. What makes the FDA uniquely challenging, however, is the nature of its work. It is responsible for approving drugs, and what we've seen over the past is that while there have been incidents like thalidomide, which was not permitted here in the United States, was permitted in Europe, and we unfortunately saw a rash of birth defects as a result, there is another possibility, though, and that's being overly too conservative in your approval process, in which case people end up suffering needlessly because drugs aren't permitted for them. And in many cases, a lot of people die because of an approval process that can take decades in some cases. So what we actually need is competition. If you don't want to discard the FDA, fine. Give us some other options and give patients the ability to make their own decisions about whether or not they want to take their risks with their own lives, especially if they actually might die from the illness that's afflicting
why should you have to be a stage 4 terminal cancer patient in order to be part of a clinical trial?
The FDA is a 20th century organization in a 21st century era of medicine. Right now, because of unlocking the human genome, we can know so much more about our predilections or genetic predispositions for reacting to various drugs. And doctors, especially in diseases like AIDS, which worked around the FDA, they're coming up with cocktails of therapies that can try to experiment basically with willing patients. We should be doing this for all drugs. Open that up to competition. There was, before the FDA, peer-reviewed journals that looked at various things about drugs. We should open that up. And then let's just get out of the business of throwing people in jail for what they put in their bodies. That just seems wrong.
All right, very good. Well, now we know for sure we're all on drugs, and maybe next time you bite into that jelly donut, you won't be so judgmental about Barry Bonds or Heath Ledger. It's not about the substances. Come on, it's the hysteria, the misinformation, and our biology that clouds the picture and creates a truly dangerous environment. How about this? Be a regulator and not a hater. Now you know your part. We can take on the government in a future show about the war on drugs. That'll be pretty good. For Matt Welch and Kmele Foster, I'm Kennedy. Thank you so much for letting me be your pusher. Good night.